All right, welcome back to another episode of On the Hunt. On this episode, I'm going to be checking out old Smokey and the Bandit locations and giving you a bunch of behind the scenes stuff that I'm sure you haven't seen before.
What the hell's the matter with you?
It's amazing that 50 years later, All right, so first up, I'm at the intersection of Highway 20 and GA 400 North. Now this Highway 20 is actually called the Buford Highway, which kind of makes me laugh.
You know who you're talking to?
Now back in '76, when they filmed the movie, Highway 400 was still under construction, and anywhere north of here hadn't been finished yet. So they were actually using it as a staging area for the rocking chair scene. Now, as you can see in the picture, they had all the trucks staged and all the cars ready to go. And then from that point, they started down 400 South, and that is where the rocking chair scene was filmed. So I'm gonna go check that out next. You can see here where the highway drops down and bends to the left. This is where that rocking chair scene started, when the music starts playing and the cops start chasing the bandit.
This car 4, where this is Black Trans Am. It's the Bandit.
So the rocking chair scene was filmed all along this way here, between Highway 20 and the next exit to the south. So this was, again, almost 50 years ago. I got thrashed in the last video saying it was 50 years. So this will be 49 years ago this movie was filmed here. So you can see some of the landscape is very similar to what it was before. Obviously the highway is a lot bigger and a lot busier than it was back in '76.
I see a portable gas station up ahead of me. Do you copy?
So at one point Frog was saying, they could see right down in this car. And then Bandit goes, yeah, spot them beavers.
That's why I used to love to drive those trucks, guys.
Now, if you look real close, they actually put the T-top back on over top of Sally Field at one point. I don't know if her hair was blowing or maybe there was too much wind noise.
I see a portable gas station up ahead of me. Do you copy?
But I guess she didn't want them to spot any beavers. Now, obviously, since this was the end of the highway, it probably wasn't as busy as '76, and I'm sure Hal probably had the local sheriffs close the highway down so they could film that scene. Yeah, it's pretty cool to be in the same spot 50 years later, 49 years later, and see what it looks like now. Like I always say, you can't call yourself a Smokey and the Bandit historian unless you actually go and see all of the places where the movie was shot.
Bet your ass on that, boy.
So I believe this overpass was in one scene.
Eastbound and down, are we gonna do what they say can't be done? We've got a long way to go and a short time to get there.
So it was a relatively short section between Highway 20 and Highway 141, and that's where they did the whole take of hiding in behind the trucks and then moving over. And right here, just after the overpass at 141, and it looks like I got lots of traffic, so I'll have lots of time to explain. This is where the Bandit was hidden in behind. You can see, again, it looks very similar to how it did in '76. And you can see Bandit is tucked in the cars, and then the cop goes around just here at 141 at the overpass. He goes down into the ditch off to the left there.
There's stick in Atlanta, and there's beer in Texarkana, and we'll bring it back no matter what it takes.
And Bandit's safely tucked in this hidden lane here, hidden in behind the trucks. And then after this overpass, if you look to the left, you can see the same kind of the exit headed north in the scene.
Are we gonna do what they say can't be done?
And then the cop goes tearing off down the highway there. And then Bandit pulls out and then takes off. So they basically, that, whatever that was, about a mile, maybe two, and that was where the entire rocking chair scene was filmed. Cool. All right, this next stop in the tour is the Union 76 gas stop or truck stop that Bandit pulls in to get some gas and Frog pulls in to take a pee. Now, back in the 90s, they tore this beautiful Union 76 truck stop down and put up a pitiful Best Buy, but this was actually the spot where that truck stop was. Now, the building was a little closer to here, so the Bandit would have came pulling in from there and then would have pulled up here.
Howdy.
Trans Am, what's your pleasures?
Fill it up, my man.
And then the building was only about to there. So Buford would have been sitting facing this way when he had that interaction with Burt Reynolds.
Sheriff,
I'm listening.
do the letters FO mean anything to you?
Now, interestingly enough, I actually had to ask my dad about the dime story. I'm like, what did Sally Field need a dime for?
Look, I've got to go 10-100. Could I have a dime?
Crawl under.
And he said, oh, well, back in the 70s, you had to put a dime in order to open the stall door in the washroom. So that's why Bandit said crawl under.
Terrific. Crawl under.
Now, Buford would have been parked somewhere over here. Again, the building was a little farther over. Now, the way I can actually tell that this was the spot is if you look way off in the distance there, behind that red sign, see if I can zoom in. You'll notice that power pole with the two fingers pointing down. Hold the camera steady, Mark. So that power pole there was actually in behind Buford. So Buford would have been parked somewhere over here, again, a little bit farther that way to the east. And then after he saw Bandit take off and drive away, of course, Bandit wouldn't have been able to get on I-85, so it was just a little bit of movie magic. And then Buford went tearing forward with the car up in the air and ended up putting his son, Junior, up on the hood. Now, if you look real close, you can see where they had the car tied off so the car didn't slide off the Le Mans that they had it parked on.
What happened, Daddy?
Get back in that goddamn car.
And a little bit of movie trivia for you. They actually had a scene that was cut from the film where Bandit actually, he realized that they had figured out that he had band 1 license plate. So he stopped and stole a plate off another car that was parked, and he swapped that plate and then took off, but they ended up cutting that out of the film. Now, this was one of the few scenes where they actually had Burt Reynolds and Jackie Gleason together in the same shot. It was this, and it was the Old Hickory House, and I think that was pretty much it, where they were in the same place at the same time. They didn't have a lot of interaction in the film, but this was definitely the spot. It's a shame it's not a truck stop anymore. That would have been a hell of a lot cooler than a Best Buy. So this would have been the ramp that Bandit used to exit onto the freeway to catch up to Snowman.
Hello there, Snowman. I'm right beside you, son. Looks like we got a clear shot all the way to the Bama state line.
Now, due to the fact that we're almost 50 years later, it's changed significantly, but that would have been the overpass way off in the distance there. And you're not able to exit onto 85. This is just an express lane now. But again, you would have just exited down to the left there, pulled up beside Snowman, and then you see that overpass way off in the distance as they go tearing off.
Oh, a clear shot to the Bama state line, huh? I'm gonna believe that when I see it.
All right, so I'm here in Lithonia at Redden Park, and this is where the scene was filmed, where they did the big jump into the football game there.
Jesus! Oh, look, a football game.
A lot's changed here. I've been trying to determine, kind of get my orientation, and from my best guess is the jump where the trees were, the jump was that way, and the Trans Am jumped into the field and then went towards the home plate. It was actually a baseball diamond, not a football field.
Come on, Billy Ray, get tough.
So the stunt drivers, there was two. There was Andy Gibbs and there was Janet Brady. And Andy looked like Burt Reynolds, and Janet looked like Sally Field. And so Janet was actually driving. They actually had the ramp built. And again, I think it was over there, and then they jumped it near the edge of the trees. So Janet and Andy weren't aware that the groundskeeper actually watered the grass the night before. So when they jumped the car and were headed towards the kids, the grass was wet, so they couldn't stop.
Watch out, look out for the kid! Don't hit the kid!
And I believe they situated the jump right on the edge. Kind of like right here, there might have still been some trees where this concrete was here. So it still looked like they jumped up through the trees and came flying out over this fence. Then of course landed in the field, kind of pointed towards home plate. Now when they landed, Janet was supposed to actually turn to the left and head away from all the kids. But again, as I mentioned, since the grass was wetted down the night before, I guess the groundskeeper didn't know they were filming a famous movie the next morning. She just kept sliding, so you can see Andy in the passenger seat grab the wheel and crank it to the right, which would have steered him over that way.
Get your hands off my wheel! Oh, leave the left, leave the right, stand up, sit down, what are you doing?
Where they hit the dugout.
Leave the left, leave the right, stand up, sit down, what are you doing?
So newspaper articles from that time stated that there were a couple of people that were injured and sent off to the hospital, but they survived. You can see a couple kids right at the last minute kind of jump out of the way, and I think both edges of the car kind of clipped them. So the car got piled into the dugout, and that actually drops off down there. So they didn't keep going like the scene kind of indicated. The car was into the dugout. They stopped filming. They got the people medical attention.
When the car hit, two things happened. Number one was I was not aware that we had watered this last night, or that they had watered it. And even though we put on Pirelli tires to try to compensate for it, we just couldn't get stopped. That's all there is to it. I just thank God that one of my stuntmen had enough sense in there and the stunt girl both, to turn that car and get it outside of these people.
And then for the next scene, they just built a fake wall to drive through. And out onto the road. Now, there's a white house in the background that I tried to match up, and I toured all around here. I can't seem to find that house, so it must be gone. But what I'm guessing is they built the fake wall against that road there. There's a new church right across the street there, so maybe that original white house that's in the scene there as they drive away is gone now. But they built that fake wall and they drove it through to make it look like it was one continuous scene of them driving through the dugout, and off they go. Now, because that car was damaged when they piled it into the dugout, they must have grabbed another Trans Am that they had, but it didn't have the CB antenna mounted onto the roof yet. So they just grabbed a magnetic one and threw it on there. But then when they drove through the boarded wall there, or the fake wall, one of the boards caught the antenna and knocked it off as they drive away. Hey, a football game. Can we stay and watch, Daddy?
You stay and watch the game. I'm going back.
All right, so next up was probably one of my favorite Buford T. Justice scenes. So this was the one where Bandit and Frog came around here, and she did her left, or a half a U.
What the hell was that?
And then, of course, Buford was following, but the funeral procession starts and blocks him right in this spot here. So you can see the Redden Elementary School in the background. Now the school has changed slightly. The school ended there in the movie, and now again, almost 50 years later, they built an extension to bring in more kids. But this would have been the spot where he was parked. Now, from what I've read, Jackie Gleason ad-libbed that entire scene. That was all him with the would have cremated the sumbitch.
I could have been kicking up Mr. Bandit's ass around the moon by now.
So that was all Jackie. He was just he was an incredible artist, comedic artist. So then, of course, once the funeral procession left, then they were able to, you know, plop back down, throw their hats on, and then go rolling down this road and off in that direction past the cemetery. But it's so cool. It's very similar to how it was back then. The power lines are the same. The cemetery's still there. Yeah, that's very cool. And one little tidbit for you is the grave robber. That scene was actually filmed in California after filming Wrapped. It was filmed in a studio. The car wasn't moving. They were just giving it a little shake. And that's why the curtains were drawn on both sides.
Put the pedal to the metal, good buddy, and we'll hold this county mountain as long as we can. Come on.
Well, I've got to go in the morning to Kanye's and pick up a load of manure.
Shitty job.
All right, so this next one was a little tricky for me to find. So this is a scene in Kanye's where they did the
Big Smokey Red 22. Woo!
Now, interesting about that scene is it was all filmed in Conyers, Georgia here, but what ended up happening was when the footage got sent to California, it got damaged on the way. So all of the scenes that they filmed, other than that one where they pulled down that road, which I'm going to show you here in a second, was all lost. So they had to refilm it all in California. So as far as I can tell, the only clue that I had in that scene where they all pulled down the road for the Big Smokey Red 22 is there's a sign right here on the corner that says King's Forest. At 1 mile. So this is a straight stretch of road and it's about 1 mile down that way. It's a dead end road that curves. So it wasn't actually the road. It was telling people, hey, there's some new homes down that way. So that was sitting right here on the corner. And if you look, you see those white houses? As you watch the cars, or not the white houses, but those white buildings there, I don't know if it's a house or not. As you watch the cars turn and go down this road, you can kind of catch the corner of that. I'm pretty sure this was the spot. Now, as I mentioned, the original footage was lost, so they had to kind of splice in scenes from California. So you can kind of tell the difference between the California scenes and the ones that were shot down here in Conyers, because of course the sign was here, but then when they show the California scenes, there's a steel barricade around the corner, and the scene kind of flips back and forth. But this would have been the scene where they all went tearing down and blocking all the cops so Bandit and Harry could get away. Now, another interesting piece of trivia, movie trivia, from this Conyers scene was Hot Pants Hilliard.
And who wants to know?
Now, originally in the script, Bandit was supposed to go on a date with Hot Pants the night they took off to Texarkana to get to Texas. So obviously that scene didn't make the movie, but that's why she was so mad at him when he was talking to her on the CB. And again, last point with the footage being lost, the original Hot Pants, we don't know who the actor is. That footage is lost and that person still hasn't been identified. But so they had to film that new scene in California. So that's the new Hot Pants, or the second Hot Pants.
Affirmative, affirmative. I'm still dishing it out.
And she was actually quoted as saying that she actually never met Burt Reynolds in real life till like the 25th anniversary on the Bandit run. They actually got to meet face to face. But yeah, these are the white buildings I was talking about. And if you look real close as the vehicles pull down this road, you can kind of catch the corner of that. So I'm pretty sure this is the spot. Big Smokey Red 22. All right, so next up I'm in McDonough, Georgia. And this was a scene where Bandit pulled in late at night and came ripping down that road around the corner here and then in behind that little hut. And this is where he broke the fourth wall and smiled at the camera. The little building that was here, that was actually operated by the police. That's kind of funny. And yeah, so he would have came around here, around the corner, and like I say, pulled in right in here, and stopped, smiled at the camera, and then took off that way. And if you can see, the buildings are still quite similar. So they actually filmed Burt Reynolds coming down this street here, and then he makes that hard turn. And that was the end of the scene for Burt Reynolds until he actually went up the curb, or well, and he did that little smile at the camera there and broke the fourth wall. But the actual stunt scene was done by Alan Gibbs. Alan was actually a partner. He was the founder of Stunts Unlimited with Hal Needham. So he was actually Hal Needham's buddy. But because he looked like Burt Reynolds and because Hal was behind the camera, they got Alan to do a lot of the stunt scenes. Now, Alan actually came in the Trans Am ripping around the corner, and things are a little different now. They made this a two-lane thoroughfare. But back in '76, there was a little concrete median in the middle there. And when they did the first take, Alan comes ripping around the corner, and he comes in too hot, and he slams into that curb with both the front and the rear of the car. And he broke both wheels and popped both tires. I guess it was a loud bang is what a lot of the folks that were around here during filming said. So they had to actually take that car out of the way, get that carcass out of the way, and then they got another Trans Am in, and then they let Alan try it again, and he actually made that turn, fishtailed around, and then bumped this curb. And then got the car up into here, and then they would have thrown Burt Reynolds back in there when he did that little smiling scene. Now I'm just wondering if this was the tree that was behind the car, because that looks about the right vintage. That tree's been around here for quite some time. So maybe the that little building was over in this spot, and then the Trans Am was kind of sitting here.
Are we gonna do what they say can't be done? We've got it long.
And then Burt pulled forward and did that little coy smile, and then took off down that way. So cool, so cool. Okay, let's see if you recognize this next scene. I'm actually only about 500 yards south of where I just was in downtown McDonough. Do you recognize that? That's Grady Lamar's Greasy Spoon.
I knew you was coming. Oh, Snowman.
So Snowman would have been coming down this road 49 years ago. So you don't get run over here, Mark. He would have been coming straight down this road, and he would have pulled in to Lamar's. Now back then it was a Union 76 gas stop, and it was Grady Lamar's soul food, and it was Lamar's Sportsman's Club. That's what it was called. Now, a little interesting tidbit is Grady Lamar, the guy that was on the CB, said, "I knew you was coming." He was actually the owner of this place. This was a real Greasy Spoon joint back in '76. And this would have been where Snowman pulled in. You can still see where the fuel island was. How do you know you're in the future? Man, that is cool. So the Snowman truck, the 73 Kenworth, would have been sitting right here. Fill it up, Hoss.
How much are you, Billy? 73.84.
So this was the actual spot. So Snowman would have got out of the truck, grabbed Fred, would have been hanging on to him, and this shutter door here was actually the double doors that went into Lamar's. Now right beside the double doors would have been, looks a little wider now, but right beside the doors is where that palm tree was.
Come on, boy. Inside.
And this would have been where Snowman went in and asked him to cook the onions this time. Wow, not much left inside here. So this would have been where Snowman was chatting it up with Lamar, and then the bikers started giving him a hard time.
I don't think Fred bit you, mister. Well, Fred absolutely don't like grease.
And on the back there would have been the sign that said, "Kofi and do nots."
I knew you was coming. Oh, Snowman.
And the bikers would have been saying, "Is this your mutt?" And that would have been where they grabbed Snowman and then knocked him back through this door and Jerry Reed would have been laying right here with his bleeding nose. Oh man, that's cool. 49 years later. So then, after that, he would have went back to the island and climbed back into the snowman truck, again the 73 Kenworth, and then he would have pulled out, and this is where all the motorcycles were. All the bikers' bikes were pretty crappy bikes. Obviously, Hal didn't want to spend a lot of money on real motorcycles. And then the snowman truck took off and then squashed all the bikes. And this must have been, I don't know if it was a one-way at that time, but then the snowman truck would have taken off down the curb and then off that way. Another little interesting tidbit is all the bikes were wired and staked to the ground because they didn't want them to flip up under the truck or under the trailer and do any damage. Oh man, Grady Lamar's Greasy Spoon. How cool is that? Far out. All right, so now I'm in a town called Riverdale. Where's Jughead and Archie? And this is where Bandit did that mean burnout 49 years ago and then took off down that way. Followed by Snowman coming down here and then following him off into the distance. Man, how times have changed 49 years later. Yeah, unfortunately this rental car won't do a mad burnout in this intersection, so I can't recreate that scene. But if you listen real close, you can actually hear a shift where the engine dies off there when the driver, it was probably Alan there, stepped on the clutch and shifted to the next gear. So they must have had a couple of 4-speeds in the bunch of Trans Ams that they had. And what I've read is originally there was only 4 Trans Ams used, at least that's what I originally thought. 3 were in the movie and then 1 was used for promotional. But then someone, I read that someone that was a witness in McDonough, Georgia said he saw a car hauler and it had 5 Trans Ams on it. And he actually went up and asked Hal Needham if he could actually get one after filming was done. And Hal was like, yeah, no, sorry, we can't give you one of the Trans Ams because they actually don't even have VIN numbers. So that was that's why Pontiac made it mandatory when filming was done, to squash all the cars. So the original Trans Ams that were used in the film are long gone. And at least from that one eyewitness, there was 5 used. And I could see that. They did a lot of damage to those Trans Ams trying to get that movie filmed. All right, so final stop on the tour. This was the location of the Old Hickory House. The choke and puke where Bandit tried to drop Frog off so she could get a bus ticket back to Jersey. And this was actually the one and only scene where Burt Reynolds and Jackie Gleason actually had a scene together.
Let me have a Diablo sandwich of Dr. Pepper. Make it fast. I'm in a goddamn hurry.
After they had done the scene, Burt Reynolds supposedly didn't want to do any more scenes with Jackie Gleason. So I don't know if he felt that Jackie was stealing the spotlight or what, but that was the only scene they actually were on camera together. So yeah, unfortunately the Old Hickory House is gone. So I can't get me a Diablo sandwich and a Dr. Pepper, but I guess I can go to Wendy's and get the next best thing. But if you notice in the movie when Burt Reynolds comes out of the Old Hickory House and then Frog's got the car and he jumps into the passenger seat and he's like, hey, what are you doing in my car? And then she goes tearing around the Old Hickory House sign and then goes heading down the road there.
Hey, what are you doing in my car? You're going the wrong way.
Oh! Hang on!
What the hell are you doing?
So I wonder if this was one of the posts where the original Hickory House sign was. This would have been about the right spot. And then there would have been trucks parked over there because it was a truck stop back in the day. And then it looks like this was the original exit back onto the road. Yeah, this looks about like 49-year-old asphalt. Yeah, how cool is that? Yeah. It's a shame not too much is left, but this is definitely the spot because if you look close, when she goes tearing around that sign, you can actually see this highway exit in the background bending down.
Hang on! What the hell are you doing?
Where that blue truck is. Yeah. Walking on hallowed ground here. Very cool. All right, so that concludes today's tour. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Hope you learned something about Smokey and the Bandit, Twin Sticks' favorite movie that you didn't know before. And with that, I'm gonna wrap it up there. See you in the next one, and don't ever forget, if you got it, truckers brought it.
Nice ass.